Liberia, officially the Republic of Liberia, is a country on the West African coast. It is bordered by Sierra Leone to its northwest, Guinea to its north, Ivory Coast to its east, and the Atlantic Ocean to its south and southwest. It has a population of around 5 million and covers an area of English is the official language, but over 20 indigenous languages are spoken, reflecting the country's ethnic and cultural diversity. The country's capital and largest city is Monrovia. Liberia began in the early 19th century as a settlement of the American Colonization Society (ACS), which believed black people would face better chances for freedom and prosperity in Africa than in the United States. Liberia was the first African republic to proclaim its independence, and is Africa's first and oldest modern republic. It was among the few countries to maintain its sovereignty during the scramble for Africa. During World War II, Liberia supported the United States war effort against Germany, and in turn received considerable American investment in infrastructure, which aided the country's wealth and development. President William Tubman encouraged economic and political changes that heightened the country's prosperity and international profile. Liberia was a founding member of the League of Nations, United Nations, and the Organization of African Unity. The Americo-Liberian settlers did not relate well to the indigenous peoples they encountered, especially those living in the more isolated bush. Colonial settlements were aided by the Kru and Grebo from their inland chiefdoms. Americo-Liberians promoted religious organizations to set up missions and schools to educate the native populace. In 1980, political tensions from the rule of William R. Talbot resulted in a military coup during which Talbot was killed, marking the end of Americo-Liberian rule in the country and beginning over 2 decades of political instability. 5 years of military rule by the People's Redemption Council and 5 years of civilian rule by the National Democratic Party of Liberia were followed by the First and Second Liberian Civil Wars. These resulted in the deaths of 250,000 people, about 8% of the population, and the displacement of many more, with Liberia's economy shrinking by 90%. A peace agreement in 2003 led to democratic elections in 2005, in which Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president, making history as the first female president in the continent. National infrastructure and basic social services were severely affected by the conflicts as well as by the 2013 to 2016 outbreak of Ebola virus, with 83% of the population living below the international poverty line as of 2015.
History. Indigenous people.
The presence of Old and earliest Stone Age earliest ESA artifacts in West Africa has been confirmed by Michael Omoluwa, attesting to the presence of ancient humans. Undated Acheulean ESA artifacts are well documented across West Africa. The emerging chronometric record of the Middle Stone Age MSA indicates that core and flake technologies have been present in West Africa since at least the Middle Pleistocene 780 to 126,000 years ago, or in northern, open saline zones, and that they persisted until the terminal Pleistocene, Holocene boundary 12K in both northern and southern zones of West Africa. This makes them the youngest examples of such MSA technology anywhere in Africa. The presence of MSA populations in forests remains an open question. However, technological differences may correlate with various ecological zones. Later Stone Age LSA populations evidence significant technological diversification, including both microlithic and macrolithic traditions. The record shows that ceramic and ceramic later Stone Age LSA assemblages in West Africa overlap chronologically, and that changing densities of microlithic industries from the coast to the north are geographically structured. These features may represent social networks or some form of cultural diffusion allied to changing ecological conditions. This influx of these groups was compounded by the decline of the Western Sudanic Mali Empire in 1375 and the Songhai Empire in 1591. As inland regions underwent desertification, inhabitants moved to the wetter coast. These new inhabitants brought skills such as cotton spinning, cloth weaving, iron smelting, rice and sorghum cultivation, and social and political institutions from the Mali and Songhai empires. People along the coast built canoes and traded with other West Africans from Cape Verde to the Gold Coast. Arab traders entered the region from the north, and a long-established slave trade took captives to North and East Africa.
Early colonization.
Between 1461 and the late 17th century, Portuguese, Dutch, and British traders had contacts and trading posts in the region. The Portuguese named the area Costa de Pimenta Pepper Coast, but it later came to be known as the Grain Coast, due to the abundance of Melegata pepper grains. European traders would barter commodities and goods with local people. In the United States there was a movement to settle free people of color, both free-born and formerly enslaved, in Africa. This was because they faced racial discrimination in the form of political disenfranchisement and the denial of civil, religious, and social rights. Formed in 1816, the American Colonization Society (ACS) was made up mostly of Quakers and slaveholders. Quakers believed blacks would face better chances for freedom in Africa than in the US, while slaveholders opposed freedom for enslaved people. They viewed repatriation of free people of color as a way to avoid slave rebellions. By 1867 the ACS and state-related chapters had assisted in the migration of more than 13,000 people of color from the United States and the Caribbean to Liberia. These free African Americans and their descendants married within their community and came to identify as Americo-Liberians. Many were of mixed race and educated in American culture. They did not identify with the indigenous natives of the tribes they encountered. They intermarried largely within the colonial community, developing an ethnic group that had a cultural tradition infused with American notions of political republicanism and Protestant Christianity. The ACS, supported by prominent American politicians such as Abraham Lincoln, Henry Clay, and James Monroe, believed repatriation was preferable to having emancipated slaves remain in the United States. The Americo-Liberian settlers did not relate well to the indigenous peoples they encountered, especially those in communities of the more isolated bush. The colonial settlements were aided by the Kru and Grebo, from their inland chiefdoms. Encounters with tribal Africans in the bush often became violent, believing themselves different from and culturally and educationally superior to the indigenous peoples. The Americo-Liberians developed as an elite minority that created and held on to political power. In a conscious effort to emulate the American South, the Americo-Liberian settlers adopted clothing such as hoop skirts and tailcoats, and excluded natives from economic opportunities, including creating plantations on which natives were forced to work as slaves. Indigenous tribesmen did not enjoy birthright citizenship in their own land until 1904. The United Kingdom was the first country to recognize Liberia's independence. The United States did not recognize Liberia until 1862, after the southern states, which had strong political power in the American government, declared their secession and the formation of the Confederacy. The leadership of the new nation consisted largely of the Americo-Liberians, who initially established political and economic dominance in the coastal areas that the ACS had purchased. They maintained relations with U.S. contacts in developing these areas and the resulting trade. Their passage of the 1865 Ports of Entry Act prohibited foreign commerce with the inland tribes, ostensibly to encourage the growth of civilized values before such trade was allowed in the region. It was made up primarily of Americo-Liberians, who maintained social, economic and political dominance well into the 20th century, repeating patterns of European colonists in other nations in Africa. Competition for office was usually contained within the party. A party nomination virtually ensured election. Liberia struggled to attract investment to develop infrastructure and a larger, industrial economy. There was a decline in production of Liberian goods in the late 19th century, and the government struggled financially, resulting in indebtedness on a series of international loans. On July 16, 1892, Martha Ann Erskine Ricks met Queen Victoria at Windsor Castle and presented her a handmade quilt, Liberia's first diplomatic gift. Born into slavery in Tennessee, Ricks said, "I had heard it often, From the time I was a child, how good the Queen had been to my people, to slaves, and how she wanted us to be free. In 1914 Imperial Germany accounted for 3/4 of the trade of Liberia. This was a cause for concern among the British colonial authorities of Sierra Leone and the French colonial authorities of French Guinea and the Ivory Coast as tensions with Germany increased.
World Wars and Interwar period.
Liberia remained neutral during World War I until August 4, 1917 upon declaring war on Germany. Subsequently, it was one of 32 nations to take part in the Versailles Peace Conference in 1919, which ended the war and established the League of Nations. Liberia was among the few African and non-Western nations to participate in both the conference and the founding of the League. In 1927, the country's elections again showed the power of the true Whig Party, with electoral proceedings that have been called some of the most rigged ever. The winning candidate was declared to have received votes amounting to more than 15 times the number of eligible voters. The loser actually received around 60% of the eligible vote. Soon after, allegations of modern slavery in Liberia led the League of Nations to establish the Christie Commission. Findings included government involvement in widespread forced or compulsory labor. Minority ethnic groups especially were exploited in a system that enriched well-connected elites. As a result of the report, President Charles D.B. King and Vice President Allen N. Yancey resigned. In the mid-20th century Liberia gradually began to modernize with American assistance. During World War II the United States made major infrastructure improvements to support its military efforts in Africa and Europe against Germany. It built the free port of Monrovia and Roberts International Airport under the Lend-Lease program before its entry into the Second World War. After the war, President William Tubman encouraged foreign investment, with Liberia achieving the second highest rate of economic growth in the world during the 1950s. As one of the few African nations to escape colonization, Liberia also served as a proponent both of African independence from European colonial powers and of Pan-Africanism, and helped to fund the Organization of African Unity.
Late 20th century political instability.
On April 12, 1980, a military coup led by Master Sergeant Samuel Doe of the Crown ethnic group overthrew and killed President William R. Talbot Jr. Doe and the other plotters later executed a majority of Talbot's cabinet and other Americo-Liberian government officials and true Whig Party members. The coup leaders formed the People's Redemption Council (PRC) to govern the country. Government repression intensified in response, as Doe's troops retaliated by executing members of the Jayo and Mano ethnic groups in Nimba County. By September 1990, Doe's forces controlled only a small area just outside the capital, and Doe was captured and executed in that month by rebel forces. The rebels soon split into various factions fighting one another. The Economic Community Monitoring Group under the Economic Community of West African States organized a military task force to intervene in the crisis. A peace deal between warring parties was reached in 1995, leading to Taylor's election as president in 1997. The Second Liberian Civil War began in 1999 when Liberians united for reconciliation and democracy. A rebel group based in the northwest of the country launched an armed insurrection against Taylor.
21st century.
In March 2003, a second rebel group, Movement for Democracy in Liberia, began launching attacks against Taylor from the southeast. Under heavy pressure from the international community and the domestic women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace movement, Taylor resigned in August 2003 and went into exile in Nigeria. A peace deal was signed later that month. The United Nations mission in Liberia began arriving in September 2003 to provide security and monitor the peace accord, and an interim government took power the following October. The subsequent 2005 elections were internationally regarded as the most free and fair in Liberian history. In 2006, the government established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address the causes and crimes of the Civil War. In 2011, July 26 was proclaimed by President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to be observed as National Independence Day. Following the 2017 Liberian general election, former professional football striker George Weah, one of the greatest African players of all time, was sworn in as president on the 22nd of January 2018, becoming the fourth youngest serving president in Africa. The inauguration marked Liberia's first fully democratic transition in 74 years. Weah cited fighting corruption, reforming the economy, combating illiteracy and improving life conditions as the main targets of his presidency. Tropical rainforests cover the hills, while elephant grass and semi-deciduous forests make up the dominant vegetation in the northern sections.
Forests.
Forests on the coastline are composed mostly of salt-tolerant mangrove trees, while the more sparsely populated inland has forests opening onto a plateau of drier grasslands. The climate is equatorial, with significant rainfall during the May to October rainy season and harsh harmattan winds the remainder of the year. Liberia possesses about 40% of the remaining Upper Guinean rainforest. It was an important producer of rubber in the early 20th century. Four terrestrial ecoregions lie within Liberia's borders: Guinean montane forests, Western Guinean lowland forests, Guinean forest savanna mosaic, and Guinean mangroves. It had a 2019 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of 4.79, ranking it 116th globally out of 172 countries.
Administrative divisions.
Liberia is divided into 15 counties, which, in turn, are subdivided into a total of 90 districts and further subdivided into clans. The oldest counties are Grand Bassa and Montserrado, both founded in 1839 prior to Liberian independence. Gbapolu is the newest county, created in 2001. Nimbu is the largest of the counties in size while Montserrado is the smallest Parallel to the administrative divisions of the country are the local and municipal divisions. Liberia currently does not have any constitutional framework or uniform statutes which deal with the creation or revocation of local governments. All existing local governments, cities, townships, and a borough, were created by specific acts of the Liberian government, and thus the structure and duties, responsibilities of each local government varies greatly from one to the other.
Environmental issues.
Endangered species are hunted for human consumption as bushmeat in Liberia. Bushmeat is widely eaten in Liberia, and is considered a delicacy. Liberia is a global biodiversity hotspot, a significant reservoir of biodiversity that is under threat from humans. Slash-and-burn agriculture is one of the human activities eroding Liberia's natural forests. A 2004 UN report estimated that 99% of Liberians burn charcoal and fuel wood for cooking and heating, resulting in deforestation. Since 2006, the international community has paid for all garbage collection and disposal in Monrovia via the World Bank.
Climate change. Politics.
The government of Liberia, modeled on the government of the United States, is a unitary constitutional republic and representative democracy as established by the Constitution. The government has three co-equal branches of government: the executive, headed by the president; the legislative, consisting of the bicameral legislature of Liberia; and the judicial, consisting of the Supreme Court and several lower courts. The president serves as head of government, head of state, and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia. Liberia's highest judicial authority is the Supreme Court, made up of 5 members and headed by the Chief Justice of Liberia. Members are nominated to the court by the president and are confirmed by the Senate, serving until the age of 70. The judiciary is further divided into circuit and specialty courts, magistrate courts and justices of the peace. The judicial system is a blend of common law, based on Anglo-American law, and customary law.
Foreign relations.
After the turmoil following the First and Second Liberian Civil Wars, Liberia's internal stabilization in the 21st century brought a return to cordial relations with neighboring countries and much of the Western world. As in other African countries, China is an important part of the post-conflict reconstruction. In the past, both of Liberia's neighbors, Guinea and Sierra Leone, have accused Liberia of backing rebels in their countries. The National Police Training Academy is in Painesville City. A history of corruption among police officers diminishes public trust and operational effectiveness. The internal security is characterized by a general lawlessness coupled with the danger that former combatants in the late Civil War might re-establish militias to challenge the civil authorities. Rape and sexual assault are frequent in the post-conflict era in Liberia. Liberia has one of the highest incidences of sexual violence against women in the world. Rape is the most frequently reported crime, accounting for more than 1/3 of sexual violence cases. Adolescent girls are the most frequently assaulted, and almost 40% of perpetrators are adult men known to victims. Both male and female homosexuality are illegal in Liberia. On July 20, 2012, the Liberian Senate voted unanimously to enact legislation to prohibit and criminalize same-sex marriages.
Corruption.
Corruption is endemic at every level of the Liberian government. When President Sirleaf took office in 2006, she announced that corruption was the major public enemy. In 2014, the U.S. ambassador to Liberia said that corruption there was harming people through unnecessary costs to products and services that are already difficult for many Liberians to afford. Liberia scored a 3 on a scale from 10 highly clean to 0 highly corrupt on the 2010 Corruption Perceptions Index. This gave it a ranking 87th of 178 countries worldwide and 11th of 47 in sub-Saharan Africa. This score represented a significant improvement since 2007, when the country scored 2.1 and ranked 150th of 180 countries. When dealing with public-facing government functionaries, 89% of Liberians say they have had to pay a bribe, the highest national percentage in the world according to the organization's 2010 Global Corruption Barometer.
Economy.
The Central Bank of Liberia is responsible for printing and maintaining the Liberian dollar, Liberia's primary currency. Liberia is one of the world's poorest countries, with a formal employment rate of 15%. In 2011, the country's nominal GDP was $154 billion, while nominal GDP per capita stood at $297, the third lowest in the world. Historically, the Liberian economy has depended heavily on foreign aid, foreign direct investment and exports of natural resources such as iron ore, rubber, and timber. This decline was accelerated by the outbreak of civil war in 1989. GDP was reduced by an estimated 90% between 1989 and 1995, one of the fastest declines in history. The global financial crisis slowed GDP growth to 4.6% in 2009. Current impediments to growth include a small domestic market, lack of adequate infrastructure, high transportation costs, poor trade links with neighboring countries and the high dollarization of the economy. Following a decrease in inflation beginning in 2003, inflation spiked in 2008 as a result of worldwide food and energy crises, reaching 17.5% before declining to 7.4% in 2009. While official commodity exports declined during the 1990s as many investors fled the civil war, Liberia's wartime economy featured the exploitation of the region's diamond wealth. The country acted as a major trader in Sierra Leonean blood diamonds, exporting over $300 million in diamonds in 1999. This led to a United Nations ban on Liberian diamond exports in 2001, which was lifted in 2007 following Liberia's accession to the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme. In 2003, additional UN sanctions were placed on Liberian timber exports, which had risen from $5 million in 1997 to over $100 million in 2002 and were believed to be funding rebels in Sierra Leone. These sanctions were lifted in 2006, due in large part to foreign aid and investment inflow following the end of the war. Liberia maintains a large account deficit, which peaked at nearly 60% in 2008. Liberia has the highest ratio of foreign direct investment to GDP in the world, with $16 billion in investment since 2006. Palm oil companies like Sime Darby Malaysia and Golden Veroleum USA have been accused of destroying livelihoods and displacing local communities, enabled by government concessions. Since 1926, Firestone has operated the world's largest rubber plantation in Harbel, Margibi County. As of 2015 it had more than 8,000 mostly Liberian employees, making it the country's largest private employer.
Shipping flag of convenience.
Due to its status as a flag of convenience, Liberia has the second largest maritime registry in the world behind Panama. It has 3,500 vessels registered under its flag, accounting for 11% of ships worldwide. With low rates of adult literacy and high poverty rates, television and newspaper use is limited, leaving radio as the predominant means of communicating with the public.
Transportation. Energy.
Public electricity services are provided solely by the state-owned Liberia Electricity Corporation, which operates a small grid almost exclusively in the Greater Monrovia district. The vast majority of electric energy services is provided by small, privately owned generators. At $0.54 per kilowatt-hour, the cost of electricity in Liberia is among the highest in the world. Total capacity in 2013 was 20 megawatts, a sharp decline from a peak of 191 megawatts in 1989 before the wars. Construction of 3 new heavy fuel oil power plants is expected to boost electrical capacity by 38 megawatts. In 2013, Liberia began importing power from neighboring Ivory Coast and Guinea through the West African Power Pool. Liberia has begun exploration for offshore oil. Unproven oil reserves may be in excess of 1 billion barrels. The government divided its offshore waters into 17 blocks and began auctioning off exploration licenses for the blocks in 2004, with further auctions in 2007 and 2009. An additional 13 ultra-deep offshore blocks were demarcated in 2011 and planned for auction. Among the companies to have won licenses are Repsol YPF, Chevron Corporation, and Woodside Petroleum.
Demographics.
As of the 2017 national census, Liberia was home to 4,694,608 people. Of those, 1,118,241 lived in Montserrado County, the most populous county in the country and home to the capital of Monrovia. The Greater Monrovia District has 970,824 residents. Nimba County is the next most populous county, with 462,026 residents. In 2010 some 43.5% of Liberians were below the age of 15. Americo-Liberians, who are descendants of African American and West Indian, mostly Barbadian Bajan settlers, make up 2.5%. Congo people, descendants of repatriated Congo and Afro-Caribbean slaves who arrived in 1825, make up an estimated 2.5%. These latter two groups established political control in the 19th century, which they kept well into the 20th century. Numerous immigrants have come as merchants and become a major part of the business community, including Lebanese, Indians, and other West African nationals. There is a high percentage of interracial marriage between ethnic Liberians and the Lebanese, resulting in a significant mixed-race population, especially in and around Monrovia. A small minority of Liberians who are white Africans of European descent reside in the country.
Languages.
English is the official language and serves as the lingua franca of Liberia. 31 indigenous languages are spoken in Liberia, but each is a first language for only a small percentage of the population. Liberians also speak a variety of creolized dialects collectively known as left 1 equals religion right 1 equals percent bars equals according to the 2008 national census. 6% of the population practices Christianity, while Muslims represent a minority of 12.2%. A multitude of diverse Protestant confessions such as Lutheran, Baptist, Episcopal, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, United Methodist, African Methodist Episcopal and African Methodist Episcopal Zion denominations formed the bulk of the Christian population, followed by adherents of the Roman Catholic Church and other non-Protestant Christians. Most of these Christian denominations were brought by African American settlers moving from the United States into Liberia via the American Colonization Society, while some are indigenous, especially Pentecostal and evangelical Protestant ones. Protestantism was originally associated with Black American settlers and their Americo-Liberian descendants, while native peoples held to their own animist forms of African traditional religion. Indigenous people were subject to Christian missionary, as well as Americo-Liberian efforts to close the cultural gap by means of education. This proved successful, leaving Christians a majority in the country. Muslims comprised 12.2% of the population, largely represented by the Mandingo and Vai ethnic groups. Liberian Muslims are divided between Sunnis, Shias, Ahmadiyas, Sufis, and non-denominational Muslims. Traditional indigenous religions are practiced by 0.5% of the population, while 1.5% subscribe to no religion. A small number of people are Baha'i, Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist. While Christian, many Liberians also participate in traditional, gender-based indigenous religious secret societies, such as Pora for men and Sand for women. The all-female Sand Society practices female circumcision. The Constitution provides for freedom of religion, and the government generally respects this right. Public schools offer biblical studies, though parents may opt their children out. Commerce is prohibited by law on Sunday and major Christian holidays. The government does not require businesses or schools to excuse Muslims for Friday prayers. In some areas primary and secondary education is free and compulsory from the ages of 6 to 16, though enforcement of attendance is lax. In other areas children are required to pay a tuition fee to attend school. On average, children attain 10 years of education, 11 for boys and 8 for girls. Higher education is provided by a number of public and private universities. The University of Liberia is the country's largest and oldest university. Located in Monrovia, the university opened in 1862. Today it has 6 colleges, including a medical school and the nation's only law school, Louis Arthur Grimes School of Law. In 2009, Tubman University in Harper, Maryland County was established as the second public university in Liberia. Since 2006, the government has also opened community colleges in Buchanan, Sannikali, and Voinjama. Due to student protests late in October 2018, newly elected President George M. Weah abolished tuition fees for undergraduate students in the public universities in Liberia.
Private universities.
Cuttington University was established by the Episcopal Church of the USA in 1889 in Swakoko, Bong County, as part of its missionary education work among indigenous peoples. It is the nation's oldest private university. Stella Maris Polytechnic, a post-secondary, private institution of higher learning. Founded in 1988, the school is owned and operated by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Monrovia. Located on Capitol Hill, the school has approximately 2,000 students. Adventist University of West Africa, a post-secondary learning environment that is situated in Margibi County, on the Roberts International Airport. United Methodist University, a private Christian university located in Liberia, West Africa. It is commonly known amongst locals as AMU. As of 2016, it had approximately 9,118 students. This institution was founded in 1998. African Methodist Episcopal University, a private higher education institution that was founded in 1995. St. Clements University University College Liberia, a private higher education institution that was founded in 2008. http://www. St. Clements. edu/Liberia/home.
Health.
Hospitals in Liberia include the John F. Kennedy Medical Center in Monrovia and several others. Life expectancy in Liberia is estimated to be 57.4 years in 2012. With a fertility rate of 5.9 births per woman, the maternal mortality rate stood at 990 per 100,000 births in 2010. A number of highly communicable diseases are widespread, including tuberculosis, diarrheal diseases and malaria. In 2007, the HIV infection rates stood at 2% of the population aged 15 to 49, whereas the incidence of tuberculosis was 420 per 100,000 people in 2008. Approximately 58.2% to 66% of women are estimated to have undergone female genital mutilation. Liberia imports 90% of its rice, a staple food, and is extremely vulnerable to food shortages. In 2007, 24% of children under the age of 5 were malnourished. In 2008, only 17% of the population had access to adequate sanitation facilities. Approximately 95% of the country's healthcare facilities had been destroyed by the time civil war ended in 2003. In 2009, government expenditure on healthcare per capita was $22, accounting for 10.6% of total GDP. In 2008, Liberia had only 1 doctor and 27 nurses per 100,000 people. There were 2,812 confirmed deaths from the ongoing outbreak. In early August 2014, Guinea closed its borders to Liberia to help contain the spread of the virus, as more new cases were being reported in Liberia than in Guinea. On May 9, 2015, Liberia was declared Ebola-free after 6 weeks with no new cases. According to an Overseas Development Institute report, private health expenditure accounts for 64.1% of total spending on health.
Culture.
The religious practices, social customs and cultural standards of the Americo-Liberians had their roots in the antebellum American South. The settlers wore top hat and tails and modeled their homes on those of Southern slave owners. Most Americo-Liberian men were members of the Masonic Order of Liberia, which became heavily involved in the nation's politics. Liberia has a rich history in textile arts and quilting, as the settlers brought with them their sewing and quilting skills. Liberia hosted national fairs in 1857 and 1858 in which prizes were awarded for various needle arts. One of the most well-known Liberian quilters was Martha Ann Ricks, who presented a quilt featuring the famed Liberian coffee tree to Queen Victoria in 1892. When President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf moved into the executive mansion, she reportedly had a Liberian-made quilt installed in her presidential office. A rich literary tradition has existed in Liberia for over a century. Edward Wilmot Blyden, Bay I. T. Moore, Roland T. Dempster and Wilton G. S. Sankoyilo are among Liberia's more prominent authors. Moore's novel A Murder in the Cassava Patch is considered Liberia's most celebrated novel.
Polygamy.
1/3 of married Liberian women between the ages of 15 to 49 are in polygamous marriages. Customary law allows men to have up to 4 wives.
Cuisine.
Liberian cuisine heavily incorporates rice, the country's staple food. Other ingredients include cassava, fish, bananas, citrus fruit, plantains, coconut, okra and sweet potatoes. Heavy stews spiced with habanero and Scotch bonnet chilies are popular and eaten with fufu. Liberia also has a tradition of baking imported from the United States that is unique in West Africa.
Sport.
The most popular sport in Liberia is association football, with President George Weah, the only African to be named FIFA World Player of the Year, being the nation's most famous athlete. The Liberian national football team has reached the Africa Cup of Nations finals twice, in 1996 and 2002. The second most popular sport in Liberia is basketball. The Liberian national basketball team has reached the Afrobasket twice, in 1983 and 2007. In Liberia, the Samuel Kanyando Sports Complex serves as a multi-purpose stadium. It hosts FIFA World Cup qualifying matches in addition to international concerts and national political events.
Measurement system.
Liberia is one of only 3 countries that have not yet completely adopted the International System of Units, abbreviated as the SI, also called the metric system, the others being the United States and Myanmar. The Liberian government has begun transitioning away from use of